for the first time on Polish festival, we want to have a discussion panel, and we really want to have a discussion. So you there, you, John, Katie, I will name everyone. You're supposed to ask questions, discuss, and share your thoughts as well, because I've invited a couple representatives. I will let you all introduce yourself, and then we will discuss. We have 3 topics to start with. I will be trying to moderate it somehow. And feel free to add topics, add questions. I thought about having 3 of them because there are 3 things around Umbraco which are usually missed. First one is why? Why we should do it? Why we should contribute to open source? Why it's something worth for developers and companies to do this at all? Second one is e-commerce. Everyone is hearing about e-commerce. We are not doing too many e-commerce projects, for example. I've done some in the past. We have some great representatives here who have a lot of experience with e-commerce. So I hope that we'll expand this topic and share how to do e-commerce with Umbraco. And third topic is business. Basically, why it's worth for business to pick Umbraco, to choose Umbraco, to offer Umbraco services. And yeah, basically that's our 3 starting points. So right now, if you can just introduce yourself shortly, and then we'll move to the first topic.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Martin Sørensen. I'm from New Zealand in Denmark. I've been with the company since the beginning, which is around 20 years now. I am a developer of background, but are now managing our development department. We are around 230 people in general. We are in Denmark, we're in England, the UK, we're in Spain, and in Oslo. My main focus today, also in this panel, is the e-commerce part. I've been working on some rather large solutions that we've made for some of our clients, and I'm on a daily basis very focused on performance, scaling out the solutions that we have created, and yeah, generally developing business for the clients that we have. So e-commerce, performance, business is what I do. Yep.
I'm Callum White. I'm a developer at the Cogworks. I'm based in London. I've been working with Umbraco for like around 6 years now. My focus is kind of around open source and community-driven stuff. I do a lot in the community. I go to a ton of meetups. You've probably seen me at one. I think I've done like 20 meetups this year. I do Umbra Coffee. I'm with Martin, my co-host. So every Friday we'll do Umbra Coffee. We talk about what's going on in the Umbraco world and open source in general. So yeah, I'm kind of here from a community angle, I think.
Yeah, hi. I'm Chris from Frankfurt, Germany. I'm here from Byte 5, and I'm, yeah, you know, it's a bit overweight to say I'm the COO of a company with 20 people. So yeah, you know, but I'm mainly responsible for business development and handling our customers and stuff like that. I'm working with Umbraco for like 8 years, I think now. So I was in development. I'm not like developing myself anymore. There are people here that are better on that than I am. Yeah, we are doing like a lot of community work in Germany. We're doing the Umbraco Festival Germany, always in April now. And yeah, so maybe I can say something a bit like the community part and the event part. Maybe I can say also something about our perception of the e-commerce landscape in general. So yeah, let's see how it turns out.
I actually have some slides for introducing myself. I'm Rune from Umbraco HQ, or Rune, you can call me as well, that's fine. Rune. I am a trainer and develop our training materials, travel the world performing training, and then I also onboard clients to Umbraco Cloud. That's kind of my day-to-day.
Hi, Adam. Introduced myself earlier. Call myself CEO of a 20-person company, much like yourself. But I started the Cogworks, as I mentioned earlier. I've got a business partner, Dan. There's 23 of us, I think. And I'm here, I suppose, because our whole business is Umbraco. That's all we do. We don't do any other CMSs. And from a community perspective as well, just helping build communities as well. So that's me.
Cool. So as you can see, it's a really great set of people. I think we have a couple topics to cover, and as I've said, it's supposed to be discussion, but we want to start from somewhere. So for the first question, where we want to start is it worth to contribute to open source software? Why it's good for people? Why it's good for companies? And why they should do it? So I will be picking someone. Callum, want to start?
Something that I've said quite a lot to people recently. I've been asked a similar question about why do you spend time doing open source? And one of the things I say is working with open source projects, particularly in Umbraco, so contributing, learning how they work inside, has made me a far better developer. I've got exposure to a lot of different things that maybe I wouldn't necessarily get exposure to in my day-to-day work. It also means I find it way easier to troubleshoot an issue that I may have when working with a tool like Umbraco, so that's good. But also from the other side, open source contribution doesn't just have to be code. Participating in an open source community, so doing things like Umbra Coffee and meetups and conference talks and running the Umbraco UK Festival events are an equally great way to contribute. And I find that has made me I'd like to say a more rounded person. That's in two senses of eating a lot of pizza, but also being able to improving interpersonal skills and whatnot. I think that's been really great. I wouldn't have necessarily had those opportunities in a closed source community, a community that doesn't foster a sharing culture. It just really helps with getting your name out there, getting more experience in areas, getting advice off people.
I would add something, because I think that it's really great to be in open source community, and I'm saying it all the time that it changed my life. Jumping into the Umbraco community was something what's just showed me that we are not only writing code. It's not only about code, and as Callum said, we can contribute on different levels. And if it's participating in an event and drinking beers till 4 a.m., it's still participation. It's still an open source, still a spirit, still community, and even more is happening on events like that, because all of you are here, so you learn about product, about solutions, about features, but also you meet people, and those people are sometimes solutions for our problems, and more than single one. And I don't know, Bruno, you want to add something from Umbraco perspective, right?
So I've also become a more rounded person. That's because I've put on weight. Right. No, I was wondering, so I can't really talk to this too much because I work for Umbraco that offer an open source project, but I mean, I work a lot with the community, and being engaged with it makes me more engaged in my job. And I was wondering from from the business guys here, or the company owners, if investing in open source and investing time in open source helps get your employees more invested in their work and in the product they work with, because I think that's a potential benefit, at least. Also, when you're hiring new people, it's a really cool thing to be able to say that the company actually contributes back to these open source projects. I think a lot of developers find that very very intriguing. So I think from a hiring standpoint, there's a big benefit as well.
So I mean, on that, definitely, it makes a difference. So in sales meetings, we're kind of going different subjects, but in sales pitches, I actively say all our developers contribute to the community. They create packages. We encourage them to speak. We don't hide them in a back room somewhere. And developers have feelings too. So I mean, it's definitely it's and Callum and Anthony and the rest of the guys going out doing talks, doing panels like this. As Callum said, it's made them more rounded people, more experienced, more confident. Sometimes it's difficult when you're sat in a room somewhere, whether in an office or at home if you're a contractor, by yourself. And another thing about the community side, from what Martin was saying, is kind of the mental well-being and mental health. And there are, not necessarily in the UK particularly, but there are issues where developers and the agency world itself is quite high pressured. So just having other people there as part of the community to talk to and share experiences and just get along with other people, go out and, as Martin said, have beers, and just sound off to other people as well. That's a great thing about the Umbraco community, because everyone is genuinely friendly. It's not a fake friendliness. If you go to Code Garden, you'll experience it. It's quite a unique experience, and I'd definitely recommend going from that perspective. So it's definitely, from a community, it's one of the best it's the only one I've ever really been in. I don't really want to be in another one because it's great as it is. So.
I want to scale up this question a little bit, as we have a couple CEOs here. Maybe let's add something from the business perspective. How companies can support teams and developers to do more open source. We are working within the company which is focused around open source, but how other companies, maybe how you in your teams can introduce something which can help you do more open source inside of your work, and how your companies are doing it, and the rest what you wanted to say.
Yeah, for me it's some kind of a mindset thing also, and a cultural thing in the company. So, as you said, it's not only about code commits or whatever. It's mainly like this kind of unique attachment to an open source project that adds a value for itself. Because of the events, because you can have the experience as a developer not only to speak at other conferences in other countries, but you also have your own conference. You change perspectives. You are a host and so on. And what I perceive from other more business related, more a bit like fake communities, from more closed, not only closed source projects, but also more business related projects and events. They are always very, like they have some goal. We have to reach this and this number and that many leads and whatever stuff like that. And we just do, Umbraco festivals, and we don't expect something in return or whatever. We just do it because this is like this mindset of like sharing. I don't do a code commit and expect something in return, like immediately or something. So but for sure, so that's the kind of mindset. And then it's like a karma thing, it comes back to you in a positive way, maybe not immediately, and that's like this kind of perspective for me.
How does it come back?
One thing is like positioning wise. When you do community work, you're better perceived. It's easier at like sales pitches when you can, prove that you're really involved into the project. That for sure. So it's mainly a perception thing from that side, and recruitment too. Because you are visible, you're more visible. You show dedication and stuff, and that that adds up. But it's not the first priority, like in return to get something. It's just like the what happens naturally.
Cool.
Yeah, and for us, it's not just about the developers. Obviously, they're a key fact, but the open source ethos, the Cogworks, is what I'm trying to kind of ingrain through the whole process. So our project management team, content editors, and our clients, the ethos of open source collaboration, that side of it, we work really, really closely with our clients. They're involved in our daily stand-ups. They can talk directly to the developers. So the more you communicate, the more you collaborate, the better product you would build at the end of it, because you're testing, fixing things as you go through the project. You're not doing a big UAT bit at the end and then finding all the bugs. So again, the open source ethos of collaboration, sharing, bug fixing, fixing things as you go. That whole thing is what I'm trying to get through the whole culture of our company, really. And that's, again, in sales pitches, when you're talking to clients, you're not just saying, I'm going to build you a website, disappear for 3 months, and then come back and go da-da, and it's kind of a solution they didn't want in the first place. So so that's kind of, again, the open source ethos from a sales perspective is really powerful, and clients really get on board with that.
I would say also for the majority of you that are developers that it's really, really great having the opportunity to just download and start using it, because us as a company have different CMSs. We have, for instance, Icore as well, Dynamic Web in Denmark, which are closed source, and you're not able to actually download those as a developer, start figuring out what it is, start using it, unless you're in a company where you then have access to the software. So for the developers as well, it's a great opportunity to actually come out and work with. We as a company might not contribute that much code back, but again, we build insanely large, great websites, which in general then helps the community by seeing that we are able to build great stuff on Umbraco. So that's also a way of contributing.
Yeah, I think that's seeing what's possible to be done in Umbraco, and I've learned a lot just by seeing something, how it was built, packages, etc. We can learn from code from there directly. But let's also add something else to this topic, because I really think that's the biggest problem within all of developers is that they think that they don't have time for that. Why and how they can just do it, and for what? And there are some companies who supports open source. I was doing a talk in Wrocław once, and there are some companies who are just having even Freedom Fridays, right, ideas, or they are using open source libraries, and they are just contributing by fixing some bugs discovered during the work when they were using them. So it's all about the perception and also the mentality of the company, because someone would say that just don't use this library or won't fix it, why we should fix it. And then people are sometimes forced to do it, pushed to the stages, to conferences, to meetups. And big problem is that developers are usually not doing it. You are here, so it's great that you are attending conferences, but there is a 80% of developers who are not attending any conferences, any meetups. They are not sharing their knowledge, and in this case, sharing is really caring. So let me ask you for one more question. How do you have any routines like that in your companies? I know that Umbraco is doing a Freedom Fridays also for side projects and some pet projects ideas. We have the same idea in Cogworks, but what about your companies, Byte 5, Noviso, are you doing it? And maybe let's just share some ideas how we as a companies and how we as the developers inside of companies can help do it more within our companies. So Martin, you want to start?
We have different ways of sharing knowledge basically in the company. Again, we do different CMSs, so this is not specific to Umbraco, but we do our own hackathons. We have once a month where all the developers meet and have different topics. Could be anything. It could be doing estimates, for instance. It could be something specific code-wise. Could be Elasticsearch. Could be different topics, and that's one of the ways that we actually share the knowledge that we have in the company. I would say again, we don't sit down and do bug hunts in Umbraco just trying to fix it. It's more working on the projects that we have, coming up with some new stuff, something that we need to test out. Is this working? Is this not working? Could be for a client. 10 people, one night, pizza, beer, whatever it is, and then trying to figure out whether or not something works. Basically part of the way that we do it. So we don't have a Friday off where people work. We don't work 4 days a week, having 1 day free, sadly, I would say.
So something that Martin said about kind of where do you get time and how does a company support that, I think is a really interesting question, because I think the honest answer is, how do you find the time? You don't find the time. a lot of people that work on these open source projects do stuff in kind of like every Friday evening or every waking minute they have got when they're not working, they're doing open source contributions. And I think the sooner that a company realizes that you can't just expect your employees or your team to want to contribute, sometimes you also need to facilitate it. I think that's quite important. Often I have a ton of ideas that I want to work on, but I just physically don't have the time or the capacity to do so. And putting some structure in place inside companies like internal hackathons, Freedom Friday or whatever you want to call it, is necessary if you want to become like a truly open source ethos believing company, I think.
Yeah, not much to add. We also don't have like this kind of Freedom Friday, but we also like encourage people and like with other measures of support. Also some hackathons or like evening like workshops and stuff where people just share their stuff, not necessarily like project related, but more also like pushing in new knowledge, new ideas. Maybe a specific developer has some special knowledge about I don't know, this or that tool or deployment strategy or whatever, and just or a new JavaScript framework or whatever it is. So that's also I think some kind of, because we have this daily work with Umbraco, but one of the strengths of Umbraco is the openness, not only open source, but the openness to like getting connected with other technologies, and that's like more our focus on like pushing in new ideas, new JavaScript frameworks, whatever. You can connect with Umbraco because that's like, from our perception and the daily work, the main strength of Umbraco. Not necessarily the open sourceness, but the openness.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we have Freedom Fridays at HQ. Excuse me. And I think it's the way it's structured is every other week when a sprint finishes, if the sprint goal is met, then the reward is kind of a Freedom Friday, right? Where developers kind of get to dive into whatever they're interested in right now, prototype something, check out a new framework, whatever they want to do. And Latch that I talked about in the keynote is actually a product of that. So the idea was bouncing around for a long time that Let's Encrypt has the functionality to provide this stuff for Umbraco Cloud. But then I think it was actually Sebastian who made the first stab at it. And he actually created a prototype that could do this, right? And I think there was another Freedom Friday involved as well, where they kind of polished it off, and then it was pretty much almost a product that could then be kind of pulled into to the actual sprint. So now it's a product that we actually develop on, right? And then another cool thing is about that is that part of the work on Latch actually we contributed to another open source project that was building kind of consuming the APIs of Let's Encrypt in a really good way for .NET, and we contributed back to that because there was some functionality that was missing there. So a lot of good comes out of that stuff, I think. Also, just there's a lot of good in letting developers kind of think outside of the box, not just having a set task to finish all the time, but they can actually go explore stuff. I think that's super, super valuable.
The only thing I can add is really, as I said, it's difficult. It is difficult to make time when you've got client pressures. We had a retreat on Wednesday, and Greg shouted at us because project managers were hassling developers for client matters, and obviously, but at the end of the day, it's a business. It's really difficult to juggle, but you just have to kind of find a way, really. And we're trying to. It's a journey we're on. We're an agile company, so everything's an iteration. We try and improve every month that we go through. But definitely giving time to developers does create good things. And out of that retreat the other day, we did some pretty cool stuff with AI in Azure and stuff. So again, letting developers play about with other technologies out there is definitely beneficial to a company if you can find the time and plan around it. Really, it's just down to planning. But I think the investment in that downtime will give you much better and greater rewards than just forcing developers to do 9 to 5 every day. There's all your tasks, and that's it. So it's definitely beneficial to every company to at least try. If it's not once a month, once a quarter, but just find some time.
That's great. I think that as a great summary of this topic is that you all know right now that companies are doing it. It is possible, and I think that the really important part of it is that we can introduce some ideas for companies. So I was speaking a lot with developers, and they were saying that they cannot, but they can. You can just say for your manager, boss, that you want to do more open source stuff, and they will find time. They will find possibilities if they really care about you. And if they don't care, there is a lot of companies, right, who will care, right? And there's always a chance to do it. So as a summary of this idea, I would say that just do it, right? Just bring it back to your companies and just introduce the ideas for doing more open source. And yeah, let's transfer to the second topic. And this is a topic which really interests me a lot, because I was asked about e-commerce with Umbraco, and I have still questions coming from some people about e-commerce solutions. And personally, I was an administrator of one of the biggest e-commerce solutions in my past during my studies. I hated this job. I was just copying, pasting stuff from one system to another. And I said to myself that I won't do any e-commerce solution anymore. It's just hard to maintain from my perspective. It's a never-ending project if it's a big solution in e-commerce world. That's why I would really love to hear more from you, how you are working with e-commerce clients, projects, solutions, and how Umbraco fetch into this process, and how it helps, or maybe how it doesn't help in it. And Martin, let's start.
That's a lot of questions. As I said before, we at Nuvisil do a lot of work in e-commerce, and have been working for the last 20 years on doing e-commerce projects. Actually, not all in Umbraco, but the majority of what we do is actually in Umbraco. The things that we have learned along the way is, sadly, that we talked briefly about e-commerce before, that these standard products does not fit very well with the customers that we have. Not saying that it does not fit all the time, or none of the time, but when you try to build large e-commerce sites, you need, in our opinion, to go custom a part of the way. We have done that. We have learned it the hard way. Always trying to optimize things, better performance, having integrated into Umbraco as well, doing custom sections, not using necessarily all the functionality in Umbraco, but using Umbraco for what it's best for, content management, and then having other parts of the system relate to the e-commerce side itself. I could talk for hours about how we do it. I don't know if we should talk about how we actually implement it in practice, but yeah.
I guess I would call it a luxury that I've not had to do that much e-commerce. I think it's a very complex area, as Martin said. The solutions I've worked with all of the three big solutions in Umbraco, Macello, uCommerce, and T-commerce at varying points over the past few years. Never had to build a huge e-commerce site, but they're very complex, and these products do a lot of things that maybe for a simple site you don't need. And there's potentially easier ways of just creating a custom, just if you need a cart, add something to a cart, checkout, etc. Yeah, I think you're right in that finding a nice balance between the functionality that these products offer and integrating nicely with the CMS and building a nice editing experience so we don't have those awful situations like margin, copying and pasting content everywhere is difficult. I don't think it's been cracked. I'd love to see someone try, maybe build a really, really, really basic e-commerce system that's pluggable and you can build additional stuff on top. But yeah, I haven't really got that much Umbraco and e-commerce experience, so I can't comment too much.
Yeah, we did some e-commerce projects in the past, but the landscape changed and the demand changed over time. So we just use Umbraco with its strengths. So we basically build Umbraco as some kind of a content enriching layer on top of e-commerce systems. We don't, because we perceive that like a lot of companies they use some shop e-commerce solution, and then they have their CMS, like two silos next to each other, which is totally ridiculous. We try to have more of an approach of like role based. So we integrate whatever is necessary from, for example, cloud-based e-commerce systems into the Umbraco backend when the role of the editors, like enriching, doing content commerce, enriching not only product data, or not necessarily product data, but enriching product data with content. And that's one of the strengths, so that you are super flexible, whether it's now a custom section or some other types of integration. So my colleagues will talk about one of the e-commerce projects we did a bit later. So again, it's like the openness of Umbraco, which is the strength. But we also, at least for our customers, when it reaches a specific size, like trying to squeeze in e-commerce into Umbraco, has its limitations then, and so we like more use this kind of architecture, that having like a very API savvy system, e-commerce systems, and then integrate where it makes sense, where it's necessary, and then the editor experience is much better, because you can use these strengths of Umbraco than using these like ugly ass content parts in an e-commerce systems, like these very limited. It's like a travel back in the 90s or something like that. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with e-commerce, but from my point of view, from the conversations I've had with companies that do a lot of e-commerce with Umbraco, I think that the big strength of Umbraco is that we're not trying to do e-commerce, and that's not a goal for us at all. The point is that you use a product that's really good for what you need to achieve. So you pick the e-commerce system that fits the needs of the client, and hopefully it's possible to do integrations with that e-commerce system, and then you integrate what is needed for the people who maintain the website in Umbraco, right? And it can be that you have people who maintain like a product database and stuff, and they can actually work in the e-commerce solution, because that's where they got their tools. But where the crossover is, that's where you create integrations with Umbraco. And it's not something that I've heard a lot of discussion about, but it would be interesting to see if there's places where we can make it easier to integrate with these kind of systems. So I'm sure there's things that we could improve in that sense from Umbraco's side. But I think the strength of Umbraco is that we're not trying to do any of that stuff. We'll leave that to the people who know what they're doing, and then we'll focus on the content management part.
I haven't got that much to add. We don't do e-commerce sites, really, for the reason that you've mentioned. They're complicated, and we haven't really had the opportunity to do them, really. But I've seen some of the ones that you've done, because I kind of voted on the Umbraco, or was on the panel for the Umbraco Awards a couple of years ago at Code Garden, and I think you did one huge SAP integration, which was pretty awesome from what I saw on the panel. So if you need a high-powered commerce platform, talk to Novicel. Sales plug for you.
Just a quick comment. We actually, that was, I think, 3 years ago now. We reworked basically everything that we did there. What we did, for those who don't know, is an e-commerce site for a company called Power. They're in Denmark, in Norway, Sweden, and Finland. They sell white goods and IT-related stuff, iPhones and so on and so on. And of course, one of the main issues, or the main problems that we have building sites like that, is a day like Black Friday. everybody knows Black Friday. Everybody is ready at their computer at Black Friday at 12 o'clock exactly. And then all hell breaks loose for guys like us trying to build it. Because 1 hour each year, we have to be able to handle a load which is, I don't know, 50 times more than on the average day. And of course, they expect us to make the stuff work for that hour. And it is insanely complex to actually achieve that, because we had also 3 years ago, the site broke down, of course, and it was basically 7 lines of SQL code that took the whole site down. And it was 50,000 simultaneous users, and it was approximately small 2,000 requests a second when it peaked. So that's a lot. And of course, one of the issues is because we can mention caching, for instance. You just say, why don't you just cache everything? But if you have 10 iMacs at a special price on Black Friday, you need to make sure that you don't sell 15, which we also were able to do at some point. You need to only sell those 10. Otherwise, the customer will go bananas because they actually lose money doing that. So that's a part of the issue also, to actually do something like this. Yeah, great fun.
It's a lot of fun. I've attended a talk by Jarosław Pałka, who is from Allegro. Allegro is the biggest e-commerce platform, the monopolist here in Poland. eBay didn't beat them when they tried. And he said that during the Christmas time, they were buying pizzas, beers, and gathering the whole team, and they were just watching because it will blow up. It will blow up. No, they didn't know when, and they just said that sometimes Allegro were starting some kind of campaigns when they were offering free delivery, for example. It will blow up. They were waiting. They weren't ready. They had a really massive system. It's really great system as well. But yeah, that's why probably a lot of companies are scared about doing e-commerce, because it requires a lot of effort, a lot of resources to maintain it, just maintain it. And it's not, e-commerce solution is not a final product. And Callum mentioned a couple of those products. Maybe to make it more interactive, I will ask you here, who has done any e-commerce solution with Umbraco already in the audience? Marek, I know that you done. Yeah, do you want to add something maybe to the topic?
Thank you. I am a freelancer, so from my perspective, I choose a Marcello system. It's open source. So I don't do a very large e-commerce, of course, because I'm a freelancer, as I said. But it gave me a lot of benefits, because I don't have to make a lot of things like orders, etc., yeah, and products, etc. So the benefit was as well that Marcello has a provider, so I could do easy PayU integration. So I'm using that. Maybe the worst things now is that Marcello is not progress to new features now. So it's really that open source. So it's a problem, yeah, from my perspective.
It's general open source problem with libraries and tools. But that's great. I knew that Marek done some e-commerce solutions, and there is not so many e-commerce solutions, especially based on Umbraco in Poland. So that's I think where we can search for solutions. And Marek mentioned Marcello. There's a T-commerce, U-commerce. It's possible to be just installed in Umbraco and used. And it's really simple to start, but all the rest is a process and challenge. You want to add something?
I think as well, the thing a few of us have touched upon would be managing these solutions. So the scaling, you've screwed up and you've given 10 iMacs or 5 iMacs away for free and something. The consequences are high. So for like a smaller company, it maybe makes less sense. The risk is a lot higher. You've got a lot of developers, and some big clients that go with it, so it's also more risk. But yeah, I think maybe a smaller company, we've got 2 20-person companies here, and that would absorb a lot of our time, and it's a lot of risk. They're the kind of things that you have to maintain at midnight on a Saturday because, I don't know, it gets mentioned in a TV ad or something, and they properly crash. That I remember there's a TV show in the UK called Dragon's Den, which is where you go on and you pitch a product to some investors, and a lot of these companies were just small startups that had built their own website or had a bad website built, and maybe e-commerce site that was selling their products, and pretty much guaranteed every single time someone went on this show on a Sunday, the website just goes poof, because they're not prepared. You have to, I think you have to know what you're doing if you're going to do e-commerce properly. Is my summary.
I have absolutely nothing against Marcello or Ucommerce or Gcommerce. We have used it in the past. We still use it. So for small projects, it's great. If you need the back office integration, for instance, super cool. No problem with that at all. A lot of the clients that we have when we go big scale use ERP systems. So they don't have the need for a back office integration. So for some of the customers, we have zero custom stuff in the back end of Umbraco. It's all done in the ERP system. Then, of course, integrating using Elasticsearch, for instance, Redis, stuff like that. So you could go that way. No problems with that at all. As you said, if you go on TV, you might have a problem. For us, it's about squeezing the last milliseconds out of something. So if you have something in, for instance, Ucommerce that you do not need, variants, large t-shirt size 44 or something like that. If you don't sell t-shirts, the functionality of having variants is still in the code. So having a standard system, you need to be able to do everything. That takes time. So when you have 50,000 users hammering on your site, that actually is a problem, because it might take 10 milliseconds, might take 20, might take 2, but it's too much. And that's part of what we actually do.
Yeah, I think that from here we can transfer to our third topic, because we all do some kind of services. We have a couple company representatives here, and it's good that we talked about e-commerce, because it's also one of the service which can be sold for clients. And we are doing different things, different development platforms. You've mentioned a couple other CMSs, and as developers also, but starting from developers, we sometimes want to just know why we should do Umbraco, how it's better from other systems. Why not focus on WordPress, or why not focus on other .NET CMS like Sitecore or .NET Nuke or whatever else? And doing business, we are often compared. Umbraco is compared to other systems, and let's maybe just start talking about how, as a company, we can sell Umbraco, how we can use it as why companies or agencies should have Umbraco in their portfolio, and how it can be consumed simultaneously with other platforms, because there are a lot of companies who are doing Umbraco and other platforms, right? So maybe let's start from Adam.
Funnily enough, right now we're doing a migration from Sitecore into Umbraco. So the company came to us, it was about 2 months ago, I think. I'm not going to tell you how much they spent, but they spent a lot of money 2 years ago on Sitecore. And it's just a basic content site. Nothing complicated in there, no integrations really. The company who built it have done a horrific job. The website looks terrible, and they spent a huge amount of money. So they got another company in to support the Sitecore project, and they quoted them half as much again to fix the stuff that should have been working in the first place, and then to support it and upgrade it to the newest version of Sitecore. So our client said, kind of, enough's enough. Look around, they found Umbraco, got us in, we won the job, so that's brilliant. The problem obviously they had was that the team who said yes to Sitecore were trained at that point. They had the marketing platform and that side of it. They all left, all the knowledge is gone. and then obviously it costs more money to train those people again. And the problem that we find with those, and there's another project as well with Adobe Experience Manager that we're hopefully going to be getting soon as well as a migration to Umbraco, is these enterprise platforms are great, and you get the shiny suited sales demo, and they come in and show you how amazing the marketing platform is and the analytics tracking and that side of it. But the day-to-day user in the office who has to manage that, it's so complicated. When that person's gone, the knowledge is gone, the company will never use it again. It's similar to the Microsoft Word scenario where there's you only ever use 2% of Microsoft Word. The other 98% is just there, and it's too complicated to use, and no one really knows how to use it. How often do you use a mail merge? Those sorts of things. So the beauty about Umbraco is, and that's kind of how we sell it, it's simple. It does what it does amazingly well. It's a content management system. It's not a marketing platform. It's not an SEO optimizing platform, but it gives you the ability to plug all of those into it if you want to. Developers love it because it's easy. I mean, I don't know a happy site core developer. But yes, I mean, from our perspective, that's kind of why we focus our business around it, because it is, again, it's simple, easy, and it's fully pluggable compared to the big ones. And that's just a recent experience with enterprise platforms.
Well, you basically took the words out of my mouth, so thanks for that. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think the big strength of Umbraco is that it focuses on one thing and does that extremely well. Another big benefit is that it doesn't have a price tag, so it's free, which also means that we don't need to sell Umbraco in that sense, right? When these big licensed products, they have to have a lot of really flashy functionality in order for them to be able to justify a really high price for a license and to be able to justify a recurring subscription fee and all of these things. And some of them work really well, some of them are really great in demos, but I think a common thing is that all of these, whether it's a marketing platform or analytics integration or whatever they do out of the box, is that it always requires development. So you pay for a big license fee and then you have to do development on top of that, right? Because they're all trying to solve complex problems and make them look easy. But you also have to be able to tailor it to the client's need. And that's where I think Umbraco does really well, because it lets you either create something bespoke, so actually develop it in the MVC project, in the Umbraco solution, and create it yourself, or integrate with something that's really, really good at doing analytics stuff or doing e-commerce or whatever you want, right? And Umbraco at least tries not to get in your way of doing these integrations. I think that's the like
similar to what you were saying about the commerce platforms. If you want to go to that level, you have to customize it. So you may as well start from scratch and customize it properly, rather than trying to wedge an existing platform in that doesn't necessarily meet the needs of the business who are trying to use it. Because you're trying to make the business work in a different way. They may have already huge systems in place and a culture that you can't just suddenly change by sticking a new system in. And that's where it's a cultural change within a company, which is much harder to change than just installing a bit of software.
Yeah, but that's also some kind of a filter for us. Because of what you said, you have this kind of also the customers, companies, or their developers or their decision makers need to have a specific mindset to step into this direction, to perceive it that way. So not this typical like CMS evaluation process with box ticking, which absolutely makes no sense. You know, it's super flawed. It's the typical process in large companies, but it is flawed. Because they pay the licenses, they have the shiny features, and in the end, the development is around these features because they need all the customization. And what we do is just we don't necessarily pitch Umbraco as Umbraco, but we pitch, so to say, the solutions we do with it. Just solving problems, not adding up more weight, because specifically, these kind of systems are sold to like enterprisey, enterprise level. But what they really do is like you have a complex problem, and you don't solve a complex problem with more complexity. Nothing is solved, you know. You have to have like a sharp tool, or combine with other sharp tools who do who are good and at their specific spot, and then shape a solution around that. And that's the where Umbraco is really good at, and that's our perception. And when you perceive it that way, and then you will find your customers that also perceive it that way, because they spend maybe like 6-digit, 7-digit numbers on these huge platforms, and then they found out the painful way and lost a few years, and that's our typical customer, basically. Then they perceive the solution, and that can be built with Umbraco. So that's the thing that works.
So I want to pick up on something that was said there about mindset and maybe bring a different angle to this. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not actively involved in pitching for things, but we have to come up with solutions for our clients. I think traditionally, having worked in agencies for a while, Umbraco would be we'd go to pitch for a site, and Umbraco would be kind of up against Sitecore Solutions or Episerver or other potentially enterprise CMSs. But in the past few years, I think that's started to shift slightly. Marketeers have realized that they can just go onto ThemeForest and get a crappy built theme for $50 and install it on a WordPress site, and they have everything they could ever imagine. And so then when we go in and we pitch Umbraco, we really have to explain why it coming with nothing out of the box is a good thing. If you have a look at these WordPress plugins, they do everything, like absolutely everything you could ever imagine. And sure, you can build some nice stuff in WordPress. It's quite a flexible system. They've got some good stuff there, but the kind of things that most of these people who we end up talking to are used to dealing with are these just download, install, it just works type thing. We have got it for Umbraco, but I feel personally that a lot of those solutions detract from the actual value of using Umbraco, that it's perfectly tailored towards you. That's our selling point. Uskinned is a very great platform for getting a site up and running, but it contains a load of stuff you don't necessarily need. So it's tough to sell to a client, though. We'll set you up a site, it's absolutely blank out the box. We've got to do all the work, but in return, it's going to be far more flexible, far more tailored, a better experience. The V8 UI in the back office is honestly really, really nice looking. It's super user friendly, far nicer looking than WordPress and the other CMSs we end up pitching against. I kind of feel once people use the back office, then they get it, it clicks. Whereas, it's simple, I know where things are, I can edit my content without any issues. You don't get that necessarily with these other platforms, but it's that initial upfront curve. WordPress does pose a bit of a threat to Umbraco, I think, because people want something now and cheap. We do need to find a way of selling the benefits of it slightly better. But once you've done that, I think people are bought in.
For us, it's also about the pricing. I would say that I have nothing against Sitecore, for instance, but it is expensive. And usually we're up against the old mindset of nobody ever gets fired for buying IBM. It's almost the same sometimes in Denmark when they mention Sitecore, because Sitecore is, in Denmark at least, high-profile websites. So all the large company at least used to have Sitecore. So everybody else also wanted Sitecore, because if they want Sitecore, then we also need Sitecore. Not going into the open source world. So we have battled also the open source world. As I mentioned before, the Power website, I talked to the head of the IT department, and he said, I have nothing against Umbraco at all. The things that we have works excellent, but the top level, they don't like that it's open source. So if we could just make something, and he said this, called Umbraco, and make it closed source, and it would be the same product, it would be perfect. So nothing wrong with the product, but the mindset of it being open source and free didn't actually work for them, which is crazy. And I would also say that if you go into a solution, for instance, like Sitecore, use it for what it's good at. Sitecore is good at a lot of stuff, but then use it like that. Don't try to twist all the code to do something else. Use it for what it's good at. And again, if you use Umbraco, then you can take the license fee and actually spend it on development hours instead, getting benefit from that.
It's hard to add anything to this topic, I think, because I can add just something from the trainer perspective, because I traveled across a couple companies here in Poland. They were all new to Umbraco. They were just adding it to their portfolio to just have something else to offer. And it's good to see that companies are doing it, and the valid points were that we are not selling software. So you don't want to just, maybe besides those a couple of situations where someone just want to buy a knife or Sitecore just for fun, but just to have it, just to have it, like this gold app in the App Store one day for $500,000. Get rich or something. But yeah, they are just offering it, and having something like this in the portfolio, you are selling solution. You're solving problems, and you do it with Sitecore, with WordPress, with Drupal, with Umbraco. But most of those companies just didn't know about Umbraco at all at the beginning. So it's not like you are just, today we are learning about Umbraco. Umbraco is awesome. There's no other tools. We should just sell Umbraco because it's a CMS. People are just thinking that this is just a CMS. It's not just a CMS. I like to call it a kind of framework, even that I hate this word. But it's a framework. It is framework. It's a solution which helps us to deliver solutions faster. And most of us are developers. We can use different tools, different libraries, different systems, and still consume it or serve it using Umbraco. Customer don't even need to know that they are using Umbraco, right? They don't need to know about it. They are just solving their problems, and that's why I think it's important to have options. And Umbraco is a great option for companies who are .NET oriented right now, but it will be even more valid and solid if it will be possible to develop within different languages. Yeah, I think that's a great summary. We still have 15 minutes, and I just thought that maybe it will be great to let you ask some questions for our amazing guests. So if you want to just throw anything or ask for a specific topic, even outside from our short list of things discussed today, feel free to use this time and our guests. Anyone? Ismail. I will be repeating questions. The question was, in what area Sitecore is good at?
I have no idea. No. Sitecore, for instance, has the experience manager. They have personalization, which is something that Umbraco could improve on, actually. So that's one of the things that they actually do good. There is a lot of other things that they actually also do good. It's a bit of a different way of doing development for the developers also, but Sitecore is not bad at all. It's just expensive and closed source. That's also one of the areas where Sitecore is actually has some strength, because translation, for instance, multi-language, is something that you have more or less out of the box. So if you need to use something like that, it's there. If you need to do something like that, or used to in Umbraco, it's something that you need to add on. So again, you would need to build something custom specific for that. They have the connectors to integrate to translators, so you basically can send stuff off to translators. They send it back directly into the system. A huge strength, in my opinion. So again, it depends on your need, and if you have those sorts of needs, then Sitecore might be the right solution for you.
Any more questions? No? Everything is clear. So yeah, I think that we can just talk more about maybe development process with Umbraco, because Umbraco used to be seen as developers oriented or editors oriented at some point, and as Adam said, probably that we didn't see happy Sidecar developer yet. I would add SharePoint to this pool. So and I know a lot of happy Umbraco developers. So maybe let's talk for a while why they are happy and how Umbraco is possible to be customized maybe, and what interesting integrations you've done with Umbraco, and how Umbraco helped you consume those data.
I can't remember who I was talking to the other day about how difficult it is to do any kind of customization for custom properties or custom integrations with the back office of other CMSs, whereas Umbraco makes it so easy. It's a couple of HTML and JavaScript files, and you've got some fantastic editor experiences. So it makes a load of things possible. One of the examples that I've seen, the best examples I've seen, I think, of that would be something that Jeffrey Shoemaker showed us actually at the Code Garden retreat, which was an integration with Google Analytics into the back office. So they just had a section within a content node that would preview towards an editor some stats that had been pulled from Google Analytics via their API. And he said, oh, this is the kind of stuff we do all the time. And I guess if a system makes it easy and possible to do those kind of things, then developers will get excited, being able to build these cool experiences and add them, maybe even package them up, have them as a separate solution. It's freedom compared to other systems where you have to implement a ton of code or do a ton of work, and it might be difficult or buggy. I don't know. I saw a system advertised as a CMS for developers, or developer-focused CMS, which is super ironic given that it's a content management system and content editors work with it. But I feel like Umbraco has actually really, really hit the nail on the head with developer experience too. The back office is super nice to work with. With V8 coming and a big API cleanup, let's hope everything else becomes a bit friendlier. There's a lot of focus around being able to contribute more easily as well. I think that's important. I think this is probably why we have a lot of happy faces in this room.
Plus, like maybe 50% of our projects also include our customers, developers, their own developers into the project. So that's also a thing that's very easy with Umbraco. So we collaborative work with the customers, developers together. So we add up the expertise and we train them, and this is like also like a total different perception compared to, okay, I buy a product and I let someone customize it or whatever and tailor it, and then I'm just a user of the product. And with these customers, they are really attached to their solution, to their Umbraco solution. And we also have a customer who sells CMS, like a specialized CMS for the public sector, and it's based on Umbraco. So our job was like to shape their product to make this possible, and it's now used in a couple of hundred German cities and city councils and stuff like that. So it's from this point on, it's not open source to their customers, to the cities, but yeah. So and then you have like a lot of involvement, and I can also see this because like my customers, or at least like the developers or project managers for my customers, they also join me for Code Garden, so or our festival. So and this kind of attachment, it's really hard to reach when you don't have this kind of mindset of openness and open source and stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned training before, and I think one of the I'm obviously quite biased, but what I see from training, what I hear from the feedback as well, is that especially for people who are .NET developers, it is actually really, really easy to start using Umbraco because it is so close to it literally extends all of the core .NET concepts. So what you said before about Umbraco being a development framework, not just a content management system, Well, I think Umbraco is a content management system that builds on top of the MVC framework. And because it gives you total freedom to just do MVC when you need it, and then when you need the content bit, that's when you start using Umbraco. And I think I really think that's one of the big benefits, is that it's actually, if you've got the chops for .NET and MVC, then it is really easy to get into using Umbraco for sure.
Yeah, I think that extends out from .NET as well, obviously, with the concept of headless, and we've done headless projects before. Headless was a thing, but the flexibility of Umbraco not to do anything to the front end, you can just use it, use the APIs to push out to another front end or an app or any other number of different front end applications that you want. So you could have a team of front end developers over here developing an app, and then use a JavaScript framework or something just to push out, or using the APIs to push out to wherever. That's kind of a really cool thing that, again, because Umbraco is free, it doesn't have the big license fee, so you can use it as just a data repository because the back office is so usable. Content editors can pick it up in an hour, pretty much. It's not a difficult thing to learn, so just using it as a data repository that pushes out is another great facet of how to use Umbraco.
Yeah, and I'm happy that headless word was mentioned, because we didn't talk about it. And I've used Umbraco, for example, as a data source for multiple mobile apps, for example. And just because Umbraco is awesome for content management, it was just doing its job. There were no front-end layer for this project, and as Adam said, headless before headless. So yeah, that's great. That's exactly what we wanted to cover during this panel. So if there is no more questions, I think that we can just have a big round of applause for all of our guests here.